Okay, what is up guys? So Saber here, back with another video, and what I'm going to do today is I'm going to finish up part 1 of the Golems B10 video. So this is going to be part 2, and that's because I've kind of split up the audio and the runs because I didn't think people would sit through a 30-minute video. So you kind of get 2 out of this deal. And so what we're going to do in this particular video is kind of get into the light-based team. So in the past video I talked about the more sustainable, slower teams where you kind of use two healers, one passive, one active healer, and then you use 2 units that are not light-based. In this video we're going to talk about using light-based monsters in a light-based team. So with the light-based teams, you can kind of think of it in one of 2 ways. So the first way you would think of a light-based team is you would kind of have a bait unit, which is a solo light unit, which generally if they can self-sustain, that's probably better. Or if you can sustain them in some other way, then that'll also work, as long as you can kind of clear the waves pretty decently before your light tank actually dies. I think in the past some people have had success using a light Vic as their bait unit, their light bait unit, and in this case all the dark units on the waves prior to the golem will focus on your light unit, and so that kind of protects your team, the rest of the team, from being attacked, because all of the units will be focused on that one particular light unit that you have on your team. And I know I've seen in the past where people kind of used a light Venus as that kind of bait light tanky unit. She would help sustain their team with a heal, and she would sustain herself as well. And she was built extremely tanky, so she can easily take a lot of the hits while the other units kind of clear out the waves before the boss. And I think there was some Reddit discussion where she could actually, if all your monsters died, she could finish up the golems by herself, so she could solo the boss, even if all your monsters died at some point. I think I saw that on Reddit, but maybe look that up and check that if that's something you're considering doing, if you happen to have a light Venus and you haven't been able to run Golems B10. I'm not sure if that's the case, considering when they gave that to us. So that's one thing. And the other way, the way I'm actually currently running my Golems B10 team, is where I actually have 3 light units and I run my Fire Percept with them. So SAP is probably, at this stage of Golems when I'm recording this, SAP is one of the biggest things that they've allowed us to start having more consideration for in Golems B10. And I say that because for a long time SAP was not as viable of an option. It was an option, but the resist on the golem was just so high that the SAP teams were fairly slow, because it was really hard to land SAP on the golems. It's a little bit easier now, although it's not 100%. Even my Fire Percept her SAP gets resisted all the time. But when it does land, it makes your runs much faster. So there are some people who run multiple SAP teams, and you can do that. But then my current team might be a little slow. It probably would be a little bit better if I added another sapper, and I have one prepared. So I have built a Warder Miho to kind of fill a second sapper team, but from what I found, it's not as sustainable right now. I'm sure there's some things I can do to adjust that team so that it is more survivable. But what I kind of do is I run these 2 light Snowies and my light Vic along with the Fire Percept. And so what that allows me to do is the 2 Snowies have a damage dealing passive heal on their second skill, and they heal themselves on their first skill. So the light Snowies are really nice, and more than likely I suspect that they actually introduced the light Snowies when they did to help more players enter Golems B10, especially if you're able to get 2. So I particularly like running the 2 Snowies because they add some survivability to the team when they get their second skill off. And they then, in concurrent to healing the team, they're also actually dealing some pretty nice damage. I do think adding a death down would probably help speed up the team. The problem is it has to be an AoE death down, in which case more than likely it would be a team kind of with something like the fire succubus. But the problem with that for me is that I think she probably has to, I think a lot, to really speed up my runs, I think a lot of these monsters have to be on Siphon, and I don't have enough Siphon gems to go around, good quality Siphon gems to go around to support a GB10 team. So my current team is at a time, I think it's roughly, it's about 1 minute and 30 seconds, and if one of the units, one of the Snowies happens to die, then it's at about, I think it can get up to about 2 minutes or just under 2 minutes. But I think this team is at about 1 minute 30, maybe 1 minute 40 more consistently. But yeah, so those are ways to think about the light team. So in this case, as opposed to having one light monster to tank all the damage, I have 3, and that kind of allows me to disperse damage between all my light units. So one of my Snowies is actually built a little bit more, it's a little bit squishier than the other. So I have one that's on a protection set so that she will survive through more attacks in case the golem kills my Snowy. My light Vic does not have the best resist, so she's much more susceptible to the golem's death down. And so in this case, what my goal really is to speed clear the golem. So that's kind of getting back to the idea of the 3 levels of Golems of farming, really. So our slow team, where you might have 2 healers, which is going to be a really slow team, and your tanky units that also deal damage, that will be a fairly slow team, but it should be pretty sustainable. And it would be like a night run unit if you feel like your faster teams are slower and they're dying more often. This team is very sustainable. It actually has, so when the gems are really good, and I've moved gems because I've gotten some new units, but when my gems were perfect on this particular team, it was at 100% clear, and those gems were plus 15. And of course I've built my Fire Percept 100% DPS, so she's on nothing but an attack Valor set, and then naturally the Light Vic is on a protection set. So since I finished up my Light Jean, I kind of replaced the Light Vic for my Light Jean because she's an HP aggressor, and HP aggressors tend to be much less susceptible to the death break. So I can actually run her with more crit rate, and I have better HP gems. I can run her with more crit rate than I can run my Light Vic, and sacrifice some level of resistance in her case. But she still has some pretty good resistance, but for more consistent runs on the golem, the HP aggressor in place, my HP aggressor Jean is better than my light Vic. And I had a video before, I think I took it down, but I'll probably upload it again to show the damage comparison on them when they had a fairly similar gem set for their aggressor type. Now, so those are some ways to clear it. I know some people have run a Dark Mona in to wave clear. I think that's fine if you have a good gem set on her. You can wave clear with with the dark mono. So yeah, so kind of what I was going to say was getting back to the 3 levels of clearing the golem. So you have your slow runs, and then your middle set you have your faster sustainable, your kind of mid-level speed, fast sustainable, and then when you kind of reach as close to in game as you can, you're shooting for extremely fast clears, somewhere around minute 30 to a minute or under, and you also have 100% clear rate. And to do that, generally from what I understand, it's really all about speed. So you need to try and clear, so you kind of sacrifice your survivability in order to improve your speed. But if you can kill the boss and all of the wave units extremely quickly, then that speeds up your run and you don't need as much survivability. So if your monster, so if you can run with a bunch of monsters who are not 100% say built with the 100% tanky stats, you have more DPS on them, then you know you can clear the waves very quickly, and you can clear the boss before it actually has a chance to kill you. So so for most teams with attacker units on them, or light units on them that are not built tanky enough, they are susceptible. The longer they are in the fight with the golem, the more likely they are to die. So the goal really is when you start trying to get into speed team, is clearing waves as fast as possible, which, you know, in most cases is going to be a nice siphon set if you don't have these moral boost monsters. And even with the moral boost monsters, siphon sets really help to get their 5-star skills up so that they can clear waves very quickly. And then when you hit the golem, it's the same thing. You want to kill him as fast as possible, so that he does not have a chance to kill all of your units. So that's why the speed teams, you know, for the most part, a lot of times are going to be a little bit squishier, but they can output enough DPS in the form of either a lot of sap or in the form of a lot of damage, a damage plus death down, or just straight damage, to kill the boss very quickly. So those are, you know, so those are just some general ways to kind of think about golems. And I'll probably show some of my runs, but you know, I've personally removed a few gems because I've been farming the Sierras at this point, and so the speed clearing for my story mode is a higher priority for me than golems right now. But I can run golems at night at 100%, and that's really all I need at this point in time while I'm farming Sierras. But yeah, so those are some things to think about when you are entering golems, and I suggest that, you know, you guys start thinking about. I'm actually hoping that, more than likely, I think that they will release the light snowy again for Christmas. It seems more like a Christmas monster to me. So maybe when they release that, if you started playing kind of after they gave us the passive healers. So like I said, the passive healers, which generally are your entry-level monsters, 2 Golems B10, are going to be, number 1, the best passive healer, as always, is going to be the Water Persef. And you also have, and actually the Dark Jack, I think, is a lot nicer at the golem now, because it has a sap one. She has a sap on her second skill. So it wasn't as effective when I initially entered Golems B10 because the resist was much higher. But at this point, you know, the sap might be a lot more useful than it was in the past. But you know, really, you're using her for her passive heal, and the second skill is just a bonus. And then, of course, you have your Dark July. And then you have the Geminis, or one of the Geminis, I believe. So those are monsters you can consider running for. So the Gemini might be a little harder to use because I think it might be the light Gemini that is a passive healer. But I don't know, you'd have to test it out. all I can tell you is she's a passive healer, and passive healers, are really great in Golems B10 for newer players. The way, like I was saying, the way I sustain my light team is with the snowies. So in place of the passive heal, I have these 2 snowies which will heal my monsters as they deal damage. And really, they would be better if they were on a siphon set. But like I said, I don't have enough siphon sets. I don't have enough siphon attack gems to go around. That's their gem slot, so that's a moot point. But you need some sustain on your Golems B10. You need some DPS to clear the waves, and ideally you need a sapper. So in my Golems B9 my Golems B9 video, I kind of talked about monsters that will cross over to a B10 team. And I mentioned from your Golems B9 and Golems B10. So as you can see, the Fire for Seth is probably one of the best sappers in the game, if not the best sapper in the game. Oh, and also, so now with the new Rat Eye that are out right now, we have a new guy who is probably going to replace our sappers in future teams. I haven't finished building mine, but I think there have been some success stories with using him or using multiples of him. So he would be nice because, as I said before, with using this guy, you can actually disperse your damage when it comes to your light monsters. So say if you have like 3 of them, ideally if they were outputting enough attack, they could clear the waves pretty easily. And then once they hit the golem, they can just spam their saps on the golem and hopefully clear him pretty quickly. So that's kind of theory crafting, but unless some people have already run a few, multiple light radish teams, and to see how well that runs. But I suspect it's probably a pretty good run. But yeah, so if you don't have the Fire for Seth, then the Rat Eye might be your next best choice. The other choice in sappers, of course, are going to be your the Water Miho is probably the easiest one to get at every point in the game. You can also consider the Water Yuki, although I don't think she's quite as effective. She's not quite as good as the Water Miho, and that's simply because you don't have access to skill books to her. For her, if you can skill book her up, she would definitely be much better than the Water Miho. But just when it comes to access to a monster, I don't know if the Water Yuki is as good as the Water Miho for when it comes to access. Now she's a 4-star, so her stats are going to be much better than the Water Miho. But it's really hard to get 4-star books, and then it's even harder to get a 4-star book for one particular unit to get enough of those. So you've got some choice for sappers. Sap really helps to speed up your runs. If you can get them, you can keep them alive long enough to land enough saps on the boss. And I kind of talked about how you keep your sapper alive in place of the Rat Eye, because he's going to be a light monster. So on your waves, they're going to focus on him. They'll disperse damage between him as well. So yeah, guys, those are some things to think about. So I think that's good enough. If I remember something else that I probably should mention, I will talk about it in another video. But hopefully that helps get people started on Golems B10 if you're having trouble with that entry level. Now when it comes to gem quality, I think if you can get away with damage on your non-healers, then you should do that. If your monsters start to die or are dying, then you might replace your damage, your attack gems, your attack gems generally, with something that makes them tankier. If you feel like you've got a good team, but they die maybe 2% of the time or something like that. If you want a more stable run, then you can consider swapping out for one of the HP or defense gems. But that's kind of why the aggressors were nice, because you can kind of build both at the same time, or even your battle rush units. You can build, you have this potential to have survivability and attack at the same time. But yeah, so the other monster that I kind of forgot to mention, I think there's been some talk about our new Sierras as being some really nice wave clearers. So hopefully you're able to get your Dark Sierra and you're able to wave clear with her. I think she's a great unit. And if you build her, then there are a lot of people who have done gym builds for her, but of course, since she's a dark unit, crit rate is going to be important to run on her. It's really nice to take advantage of their 100% crit damage. So if you're running a team with maybe the Dark Mona right now, you can consider swapping that Dark Mona out for your nice little Battle Rush Dark Sierra. And yeah, so those are some things to think about. You can also think about getting other status effects on the monster. I think some people may run with the monsters who might have attack down. So you can consider that, although I'm not sure it's quite as efficient as getting your sap off or defense break on the monster. But yeah, so guys, I'm going to stop talking now. That is the end of the video. Thank you guys for joining, and I really hope this kind of helped people who are trying to enter Golems B10 team think about their teams. You can start with, when it comes to gyms, you can start off getting your gyms up to a plus 12 and see how well your teams run. And if you feel like you have a really good team, then you can consider upgrading your gym quality. And also, you definitely want to always use your dragon sigils. So I made a reminder video last week. We've got these Sierras, we're running for Sierras right now. And with the Sierras, you're going to build up a lot of dragon sigils, and you definitely need to use those because it's going to speed up all of your runs if you are able to get some nice siphon gems. So that's all I'm going to say about that, guys. And I hope this kind of helps somebody. And if you like this video, then press the like button. So like, subscribe, and leave me a comment, and I'll see you in the next video.